recording. Hopefully this works. So I am going to talk about the book that I read, which is Caramelo by Sandra Cisneros. And so kind of to just give you guys like a background information as to what the book is about. It's supposed to be like a semi autobiographical book, like she doesn't necessarily say that it is, and she actually begins the book with a disclaimer saying that this book is not what it seems. She says, none of the events, none of the people are based on real life. And she kind of just says, like, the truth of these stories is nothing but a story. So the reason that she says that is because she wrote this book in memory of her father, and she knew that if she asked for direct testimony from her father's relative, they would like sweeten it all up and it wouldn't actually be the reality that she was looking for. So I guess you could say it's semi because it's inspired by real life people, but it's mostly fiction because she reshapes her memories, and that's how she gets to the story. So there are a lot of themes in the novel. There's obviously the symbolic meaning of the rebozo, and there's like the way Mexican women are sheltered and what it means to be a Mexican. But I decided to focus on the father daughter relationship in Caramelo and Mexican culture and kind of just compare the two. And then I also thought that it would be a really good idea to talk about the daughter identity and like how she wants to, the main character in the novel wants to just kind of please her father and just like the dynamic of their relationship. So in Caramelo, the father is portrayed as really caring and involved, which is something you don't often see in Chicana literature or in Mexican culture itself. I feel like pop culture tends to um, portray a Latino father as someone that's not really involved, someone that has a hard time kind of relating to his kids. So in this novel, however, he's portrayed as sympathetic and someone who's really close to Lala, who is his daughter. She also goes by Celaya, so if you hear me saying that, it's because she has two names. But yeah, the novel goes from her as a child up until she's 15 years old. Her dad, even though he's mostly portrayed as someone who's really supportive and caring and loving of his daughter, he's not always supportive, which just makes the novel feel even more realistic because not every like family is all rainbows and sunshine all the time. But so at some point Lala expresses a desire to study at a university and like do other things and stuff. She wants to like teach and she wants to go just like explore the world. And her dad like immediately opposes it and says like Mexican girls do not leave their father's house to study but to marry. The direct quote is, if you leave your father's house without a husband, you are worse than a dog. You aren't my daughter. If you leave alone, you leave like, and forgive me for saying this, but it's true, como una prostituta. Is that what you want the world to think? Como una perra, like a dog? Una perdida? How will you live without your father and brothers to protect you? One must strive to be honorable. So, you kind of see this, and I personally think that it's the most cruel the father gets in the novel. And you kind of see him in that stereotypical like Mexican male role where he experiences a lot of machismo and kind of telling his daughter like what she can and cannot do, and like he kind of throws on these expectations of his daughter's role in society. So another thing that I talked about a lot is Lala's need to kind of fill this like Mexican daughter role in order to make her dad proud and to kind of like get her dad to love her. And so in this quote right here, Lala is talking about all of the things that she does, which happen to fit the like role of the dutiful Mexican girl and the like daughter role because she's like fulfilling that kind of stereotypical like Mexican woman role that like cleans the bathrooms, makes the bed, washes the dishes, makes dinner kind of thing. She's definitely trying to be the Mexican woman that her dad has been looking for. I have a lot of quotes, so just bear with me. Oh, so earlier when I was talking about how Lala kind of says that she wants to go and like explore the world, her direct quote is, "I just thought maybe I'd want to try stuff, like teach people how to read or rescue animals or study Egyptian history at the university. I don't know, just stuff like you see people doing in the movies. I want a life like," and then her dad is like, "girls who are not Mexican," and she kind of insists like, "No, just like girls who are other human beings. It's that I'd like to try to live alone someday." And her dad kind of like immediately shuts her down and is like, "You want to live by yourself? Like you're super naive." Um, and then she kind of brings up her peers and says, "But my friends say," and her dad is like, "Your friends are more important than your father." And he kind of almost tries to guilt her and is like, "Don't forget, like, family is first. Your family is always going to be there for you. Your friends won't." So she kind of like is trying to take those steps into becoming an independent woman, with her academic skills and like her other just people skills. But her dad is kind of not letting her stick to that pure identity that she is trying to create, and he's trying to push her more towards the daughter role and like kind of doing what he thinks is best for her. Yeah, so like I said, she says like right here, "I'm not meant for the kitchen even if I'm the only daughter." And so that's her trying to like start to oppose the meaning of the Mexican daughter identity. Um yeah. So that's kind of like the most, I'd say, negative parts of the novel. But obviously like there's a lot more to Inocencio, who is her father, and like he's a really just positive being in her life overall. So like this is a really long paragraph, but it gives you a really good insight as to exactly how loving the father is, and kind of just like you kind of see the more gentle side of the Mexican father, and it's something that's not really portrayed as much in literature or in like media. So she says, "Days and days, months and months, father carried me wherever he went. I was a little fist, and then a thumb, and then I could hold my head up without letting it flop over. Father brought me crinolines and taffeta dresses and ribbons and socks and ruffled panties edged with lace and white leather shoes soft as the ears of rabbits, and demanded I never be allowed to look raggedy. I was a cupcake. Quien te quiere? Who loves you? He'd coo. When I burped up my milk, he was there to wipe my mouth with his Irish linen handkerchief and spit. When I began scratching and pulling my hair, he sewed flannel mittens for me that he tied with pink ribbons at the wrist. When I sneezed, father held me up to his face and let me sneeze on him. He also learned to change diapers, which he had never done for his sons." So that just kind of tells you how important she is to him, because especially that last line, "he also learned to change diapers, which he had never done for his sons." That really tells you like how much he loves her. At some point he literally says, "Don't tell anyone, but you're my favorite." And even though that is really loving, obviously, like she's his favorite, it also reinforces the daughter identity onto her, which I guess you could also say is slightly problematic. Um, but yeah, one last thing that kind of shows like the positive side of their relationship. She says on page 232, "When I began to accept the bottle, father bought one airline ticket and took me home to meet his mother. And when the awful grandmother saw my father with a crazy look of joy in his eye, she knew she was no longer his queen." So, most of the novel is about Lala trying to figure out her feelings towards her grandmother, and she calls her awful grandmother for a reason because she thinks she's awful. Um, so that's kind of why that paragraph is also really important because it helps her create like a realization of like, wow, like me and grandma are actually kind of alike. Maybe I shouldn't hate her so much. And that's this right here is kind of when she makes that realization. She says, "It hits me at once, the terrible truth of it. I am the awful grandmother. For love of father, I'd kill anyone who came near him to hurt him or make him sad. I've turned into her, and I see inside her heart the grandmother who had been betrayed so many times she only loves her son. He loves her, and I love him, and I have to find room inside my heart for her as well, because she holds him inside her heart, like when she held him inside her womb, the clapper inside the bell." So obviously, there's a lot of evidence that kind of shows you the the father-daughter relationship in Mexican culture. So I went ahead and I was looking for kind of research behind this phenomenon and kind of like the balance of the relationship. There wasn't too many articles or just research in general done, but I did find a couple. Um, so I found that there were kind of like two sides to machismo, and one was the more positive interpretation is that a man's responsibility to provide for, protect, and defend his family, his loyalty and sense of responsibility to family, friends, and a community that make him a good man. So that's the more positive side. However, obviously, I think the one that all of us are more familiar with is the negative side, and that says excess aggression, little regard for women, and sexual prowess. So machismo is really deeply rooted in Latino culture, and so with the belief of systems in machismo, it kind of is like believed that the Latino male always has to take financial responsibility for his family. Because of that, most of the time, Latino fathers are not around because they have to go and they have to like make money and stuff. However, that's kind of like the way that they show love. Like love is shown really differently in men from like Latino cultures. One part of the article that I found that specifically regarded to father-daughter relationships was that Mexican fathers appeared to be more relaxed and approachable to their daughters. They would play and fawn over their daughters. However, as their daughters reached adolescence, their relationships changed dramatically. For example, Puerto Rican fathers may become unreasonable, unapproachable, and highly critical of their daughters' behavior and friends. They become extremely strict and overprotective with their children. But that's supposed to be the way that they, at least as far as how I understood it, is that's the way that they kind of show love. Another quote that I found that I thought would be really helpful and like showed a lot as to what the Latino father experience is that Latino fathers did not conform to traditional portrayals found in literature. Rather than being cold and distant figures, Latino fathers often appeared to be warm, nurturing, and companionable. Contrary to traditional views of Latino fathers, the fathers were more emotionally nurturing and more playfully involved with their children than the mothers were. Fathers appeared to have more complex verbal exchanges with their children than the mothers. So it kind of goes to show you that like popular culture kind of really likes to dig in on those stereotypes, which is, I'm sure, something that a lot of like cultures and races tend to experience when it comes to popular culture. Okay, I think that's all I have. Other than just, it's a great book. You should read it. And here are my works cited. So definitely go read it. It's a really great novel. And Sandra Cisneros' works are always really good. So thanks again for your time.